Today on Couples Therapy, I'm excited to have Jeff and Michelle joining me. It is so good to see your familiar faces.
Oh my gosh, we love seeing you. We're just honored that you actually asked us to be a part of this.
Yes, we're excited and we're ready for the healing to begin.
Oh, real excited.
And I say familiar faces because I got to meet you both in real life, IRL, in Texas recently. So, Jeff and Michelle from Texas, I was visiting your church, doing some ministry, and we got to connect in real life and get to know you. So, it was exciting to see your names pop up for the couples therapy. And I look forward to digging deep. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you.
I'm Jeff Collins. This is Michelle Collins. We are very brave souls in the simple fact that we are a 24/7 couple because we work together, we live together, we sleep together, we eat together, we do everything together
And serve.
Wow.
and serve together,
Yeah.
both real estate agents in Texas and Houston. And we have very different personalities. We are passionate about marriage ministry. It's something that we've been blessed to be asked to be leaders in our church and be a part of that.
Yeah, we've been married for 14 years. We're a blended family. It's our second marriage and our last for both of us. And
I like that.
we want to stay married. And we have three children between the two of us and one extraordinary grandson
Mhm.
that we're extremely blessed. And we love what we do, and we still have some growth that we'll
We
always
still have
have.
growth, absolutely.
And we're learning to fail forward and learning how to love each other through it.
What I love about the two of you is that you were like the first people to sign up for this, and you are in marriage ministry. There is a humility and I believe a strength that comes with saying, we want to keep learning, we want to keep growing, we haven't arrived.
Oh,
Because when you have that posture, you will fall forward. And so I just really appreciate that. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I want people who are listening to realize that we don't arrive. And we always have to be working on the next layer and the next layer and the next layer so that we can become more like Jesus in this relationship. And just because we're in marriage ministry, or just because I'm a counselor, or just because we're Christians, doesn't mean we're immune to the struggles that come up, the refining fires that come up every day in our relationship. So, what does that look like for the two of you in this season? 14 years in, I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and you're probably in a new season of lessons right now. So, what does the conflict cycle look like for you in this particular season of marriage?
Mm.
go ahead.
I think for me, we have a reoccurring pattern in a lot of areas, but the two that are the constant trigger or rub for me is the driving. Jeff is an extraordinary driver because he's a way better driver than me. He drives since we're on the road with real estate and going to church several times a week and just, restaurants and everything out. We live a very outward life. And so he drives 99% of the time. And when we were in our yummy stage, I call it, when we're first dating, I didn't see the siren. He had a little blinking light on there that told him how far I guess it was
It's
a
radar detector.
radar detector. And I didn't see all these things. I was in that yum stage of, oh my gosh, he's amazing. And slowly this driving became an issue. He's so aggressive on the road, but I need to paint the picture. He's the most patient man everywhere else, but on the road, it's this new person that shows up, and he's aggressive, and he's very alert of who's in his way. And I get a day-to-day
Moment by moment.
scenario of everybody that doesn't know how to drive other than Jeff.
I'll narrate a lot.
And we have done work through this. I have talked to him. I have prayed with him. I've closed my eyes through it. I have trusted the Lord. I've cried through it, and it gets better. Then we go back in this last few weeks. it's been very difficult, and I've been very much triggered in my security piece, and we've talked about that, and I started to drive, and I was praying I wouldn't get resentful with him and he wouldn't get resentful with me, and and then he started driving again this last week, and it's just a constant thing that
So
keeps.
you literally took the wheel. You're like, we're done. But you don't want to drive, so it's annoying because you want him to drive, but he's not driving in a way that he's literally driving you crazy. So you're like, give me the wheel. Um, so you're painting this picture that Jeff kind of turns into a different guy.
Mhm.
What's your perspective on this?
You know, I believe that I have acknowledged Michelle's concerns about the driving, and I've even stood up in front of a class, a full class that we were teaching, a marriage class, and I acknowledged what I was doing to Michelle when I became overly aggressive in my driving. I've acknowledged that. I acknowledge it. I understand that it makes her uncomfortable. I understand that it feeds upon her sense of security. And there are times where I'm absolutely unexcusably out of control. And
Like road rage, anger,
That's
so
irritability?
the,
it's,
gosh, that's the most part we're gonna talk about, because people will get down from their car, people have said some not nice things, and Jeff's not a fighter. So he doesn't fight with people, and I'm like, I feel for Jeff and I feel for them, and I'm constantly apologizing, but Jeff doesn't get in fights like that. People have gotten down in the middle of a highway for him, for us, and he doesn't fight them. He doesn't roll down the window. He's not like that. He's not aggressive that way, but he's aggressive behind that wheel, which I can't figure out.
I call it aggressively defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought process behind it, and I've done a lot of inwards seeking and searching of where does that come from? And there's two big parts associated with it. It's learned behavior. It's how I was taught by my brother and my uncle. My uncle was literally a race car driver. Um, and the second part is my sense of responsibility. My sense of responsibility, my brain's telling me, stay safe, get out of this situation where people are doing not smart things, going super slow when the rest of traffic is going by them. There's a lot of variables, but one of those main pieces is being on time. I have a driving desire to be either on time or 5 minutes early. And there are times where Michelle has made decisions on when to be ready and when to get into the car to give me X number of minutes to get to our destination. And if I drove very passively, if I drove slow, we would not make it there on time. And so when you combine those two things, it presses against my sense of responsibility. There are times, and we've had this discussion as well, she will have a response, a very aggressive response towards me when somebody else does something in front of me that I have zero control over, except to avoid or go around. Now, does that sound like justification for the actions? Sometimes. Sometimes, I'll admit that. Yeah.
I mean, we all have our reasons. Otherwise, we would be crazy if we just did things for no reason. Like there's always a reason, and it makes sense. It serves a purpose. Our behavior always has to serve a purpose, or it wouldn't make sense. So you're driving proactively,
I love that.
defensively. I'm imagining a race car driver like zipping in from one lane to the next lane and just trying to get there as fast and efficiently as possible. Um, are we talking anger, cursing, irritation, like that level?
There's irritation. I
There's,
don't swear a lot.
no, he doesn't swear, but there's irritation
Where
he's talking
where it
about.
really gets where it
Sorry.
gets bad is where there's something that happens in front of me I don't have any control over, and she screams at me.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I'm trying to keep us safe, I can't control what that person just did. Now, can I control my speed? Yeah, I probably should slow down.
Well, we'll break it
So
down.
is speeding the main issue?
Tailgating and cutting people off is the main issue.
Okay.
No blinker, no, and I'm like, please
Well,
give them.
tailgating doesn't sound like defensive driving.
No, that's more aggressive.
Okay.
I mean, we had an incident recently which caused me to start driving was he was in one lane and we were tailgating this truck and there was another car in front that these 2x4s are flying up and down on the trailer. And I'm on a phone call and there's a diesel behind that car in the next lane. I said, please do not cut off this diesel because it's right next to me. And I'm on a phone call ordering contacts and he doesn't acknowledge what I just said. And I'm like, please do not cut off this diesel. And because I see these 2x4s jumping on this trailer and he cuts the diesel off, the
I used my
2x4s are
blinker.
there. 2x4s are there. One comes flying to the car. And I was on the phone, hung up, and I waited a few minutes and I said, why would you do that? I started off nice. And I'm like, why would you do that? He doesn't talk. He'll stay quiet because he doesn't fight. He doesn't cuss and yell and lose that. And once in a while he will, but it's not his normal practice. And I wanted him to engage and I was poking at him and I asked him a question and I knew he was going to get upset. And I said, if Ashley was in the car, would you be driving like that? Because her security is really big. And he's like, I will not answer that. And that's where we jumped on the crazy cycle, we call it, and we started going at it. And I'm like, I'm not going to go with you anymore. I cannot let you drive. I'm going to start driving. And then I start throwing threats out. And I know like, oh, I'm going to have to live with these things I'm saying. And I drove for about 2 weeks.
Oh, wait.
Everywhere. And he seemed perfectly fine with it. And I said, are you okay with this? And I kept praying like, Lord, don't let me get resentful. Because I know I'm starting to feel guilty and I'm like, Lord, don't let me disrespect him. Let me really talk this through. Where I'm at, Deborah, with this is I love him and I don't want to hurt him. But I'm also in the place of, am I supposed to be driving? Am I supposed to give him a break till he figures out what's under here? It's not to hurt him and say like, you don't listen to me, I'm the boss now. That's so far from it. And I don't get why we're still revisiting this after 14 years of prayer, of talking about it. I don't even know if you know.
We've talked about it. It gets really good for a while, and then something happens, and then there's resentment on both sides.
Jeff, do you
Re-
think that any of your driving correlates with your stress levels in different seasons?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
maybe
If I'm angry, I'm less concerned about how Michelle feels about how I'm driving.
That's big.
yeah. Or if you're feeling disconnected
100%.
or even emotionally disconnected,
100%.
you probably, because you seem like a withdrawer. Like
Oh, yeah.
you
Oh,
go into your cave
Mhm.
and do what you want to do. So when you're feeling less connected, you go further into that cave.
Yeah. I
And
call it a castle. I use the analogy. I built myself a really strong castle. It's something I've acknowledged from when I was in kindergarten, first grade, a combination of my grandmother and my stepfather.
mhm.
And I just learned to self-protect.
Yeah. So you're not a fighter, but you can freeze people out pretty easily.
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which makes sense of why you've gotten into so many. I mean, you're talking about all these like situations that have happened on the road where people approach your car or this or that, but he doesn't fight. I don't think I've ever had that happen once because, it's a different kind of drive, right? It's a different journey. But I see when somebody gets triggered and you've triggered them, how you can still stay cool. You don't you don't fight at that point. You just kind of stay cool and collect and go into your castle.
Mhm.
How about with Michelle when you fight? Is it the same pattern of she's going wild and crazy and you can stay cool, calm, and collected?
Most of the time, So in a nutshell, I think where my biggest hurdle with Michelle is simply the fact that anytime there's an issue that's brought up, she redirects. She always thinks it's everybody else's fault, not her own. And I've seen this pattern lived out with her, primarily with her sisters. But I see it with her children. I see it with her interactions with other people. Most of the time when she gets heated, once logic is out the window, there's zero accountability of how she's affecting people around her.
So you see low ownership as part of the conflict cycle.
100%, because anytime I try to bring up something that upsets me, outside of the driving issue, there's other things, especially with us working together. Anytime I bring up something that, either hurts my feelings or affects me in a negative way or just downright makes me mad, I bring it up and it gets just redirected.
Okay. Michelle, do you think that's accurate?
It could be a blind spot for me, but I feel like when he says it, if he tells me something, I guess if you give me an example, but if he said something like we were negotiating a file, let's say for Mary, and he tells me that Mary should be write an offer at this price, I'll hear him, but we call it our lane. If it's my lane, I'll hear his input and I said, okay, I'll let her know that. And then I'll move on to what I believe that number should be. I could completely ignore that if that's what you're kind of getting at. I can completely ignore that and say, well, she really needs to be at 500 to win this bid, and that's where we're going. I could do that if that's what you mean. Or am I redirecting to make it your fault? I guess I don't know.
Yes, redirecting to make it my fault.
Oh,
Like there's no reason I should be upset about it, or, there's something wrong with me, or there's some core issue that I haven't resolved that needs to be resolved, and it's something I own.
yeah, I could see that. I have a real hard time, Deborah, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to say this to not sound like I don't want to take responsibility. I have to know directly what's happening, or I kind of get lost in like, well, when did I do that? I want to know so I can change it and help. It's kind of hard when he tells me, like I said, what can I do to be better? How can I help you understand me more? And he's like, well, be nicer. Well, I don't know what that means. I'm so direct. I need him to be direct with me. And I get confused, like, be nicer. So should I cook you better food or should I not talk during the drive? I don't know what nicer means. And so when he says even that, like, I redirect it, I probably do, but I don't even know what that looks like. And I don't really know, other than saying I accuse him of it being the problem. I get kind of lost in that piece of it. And I don't know how to explain that.
So you're the type of person who needs more of an instructional guide, a handbook, following the rules. Like, does that seem to help you? Jeff, you're
No,
shaking your head no, so I'm interested to.
I think I'm more like, I'm more direct, like if he says, hey, that hurt my feelings, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about it and resolve it right then and there, because then I move on. I'm so fast, and that was one thing that we've talked about a lot is I move at such a fast speed, and he's brought that to my attention with the team, and I'll railroad everybody and like, okay, we got to get Mary's deal done. And then I may be like the one that's saying like, by 2 o'clock, this has to be done. I want it done. I don't care what has to happen. We don't want to lose the deal. And then I'll slow down and we got the deal and we want it. And then I look back and he says, you ran everyone over, and you're like, okay, team, we won. But everybody else has now, I guess, been offended, or I've ran them over, or I guess that's how you kind of explain it to me. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me apologize. I'm sorry. I think I'm more of that. I'm 10 steps ahead. I guess that's the way I can explain it.
It's one way.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure it out, figuring out exactly what you mean. This is the part I get stuck on.
I don't know if you've created an interval from your previous counseling sessions, but you've told me on a number of times that nobody can tell you anything. You have to figure it out yourself.
I don't know if I live in that and believe that, but wait, tell me that again, that nobody can tell me anything and I have to figure it out myself?
Yes, that your counselor said nobody can show you the things that show you whatever it is, whether it's something that's going on, something wrong that you're doing, or something that's that may be hurting other people, that you have to figure it out yourself. And you're good at that.
Yeah.
You're good at self-introspection. You do it a lot, but sometimes it takes you a while.
Yeah, I think what the counselor was saying when I was in counseling when I first met Jeff, and I asked him to meet her because I really, really liked her. And I was having some struggle with the kids at that time. They were teenagers. And what she said is, he said, I've told her that lots of times. And she said, well, I don't tell Michelle what to do. I guide her, and she's going to decide ultimately what's her decision. I think that's what you're referring to.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I need help. I mean, that's why I'm here and we live in counseling. I think I need to identify how to deliver it. I think for me, if you asked me what my issue is and what I do to Jeff is, I'm very aggressive in everything. I'm passionate about, like, even if he delivers the tax bill, I'm like, what do you mean it's $30,000? I'm that aggressive, and I'm like, I don't mean it towards you. I'm just expressing, like, how could it be so high? I think that is that a rub for you, that I'm aggressive like that? And I'm that
So you're kind of intense
super,
outside of driving.
yes, I'm intense on everything. Like, I love food. I'm intense about, I'm like, Jeff, can you believe this place is making the salad again? I'm passionate and intense on everything almost, right?
And
And
Jeff is not like that,
no,
except when he's driving.
And well, yes, yes. And we've acknowledged, with our personality types, that when we go into our unhealthy place, I act like her.
and then I act like him, I shut down.
And
So we
so
cross.
I think the only way to argue with her where she gets any kind of a point, because it's what I've seen everybody else do with her, is I have to get very aggressive.
So the irony is you like each other the least when you're acting the most like each other.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
absolutely
true. That's absolutely true.
That's a good observation.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Very fascinating. It's like, oh, why are you acting so much like me? I don't like this.
Yeah. It's true. That is really a big thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we can't talk about, probably about Enneagram because it's confusing, but what I learn is I go to a default of the 5, and then he'll go to the default of the 8, and we understand that. And
okay, so if I asked you what is your deepest need in marriage, like what do I really need? If I could narrow it down to the need that I have, would it be, I'll give you some examples, the need to be cared for, need to be heard, need to be noticed, validated, the need for safety and security, the need for stability. There's so many different needs. What would you each say is your personal deepest need in this relationship?
I can answer that immediately. And I would say simply, I need her to ask great questions. And if
well, I'm going to pause you because I don't think that's really a need. That's what you want her to do. So what is her doing that? What need does that fill for you?
right, and I was going to walk down that path. It shows that she respects how I feel and how I think about that, whatever that thing is.
So would you narrow that down to something such as the need to be heard or validated?
Yes.
Okay. Which one of those feels more?
Heard.
Okay. Like somebody who can look at you. I see you. I hear you. Like I'm here with you. I get it.
Yeah. Because the validation piece for me isn't necessarily as important as being heard, because I'm fairly confident that the things that I say are valid. I don't know if that makes sense.
So when she gets in the car like 10 minutes after she's supposed to, and you're driving, you're probably annoyed, you know that you've got this need. I like to be on time. It's important to me. Is there anything about that where you feel in that moment like you're not being heard?
100%.
And then you go into the car ride with that feeling of she doesn't care.
Okay.
I'm not a priority. She doesn't hear
It's
me.
built up.
My needs aren't a big deal to her. and then you go into your castle and have a higher likelihood to be aggressive, is my guess, on that day than on another day where you guys are feeling connected and she gets in the car 15 minutes early and you're talking, you're connected, there's less of a need to go into your castle and go into your typical like control aggressive nature.
Yes.
So the need to be heard. What would you say it is for you, Michelle?
I would say it would be vulnerability and intimacy.
The need for him to be vulnerable?
More vulnerable and more and our intimacy level for that. I think that I feel, and we talked a lot about that, that the further we get into these spaces that we're in, our intimacy suffers from that.
So you have a deep need for connection
For connection and vulnerability.
and vulnerability. His vulnerability is what helps pave the way for connection. Just as he was saying, you asking questions is what paves the way for him to feel heard. You
Yeah.
want to feel connected. What is that about wanting to feel connected? Would you say it's a need for security in the relationship? When you feel connected, you feel more secure?
I think I feel more secure, but I also feel like we're on the same page and we're not distant from each other. It feels a little distant at times, and not every day, but just in different seasons. Um, we're coexisting and we're in the living room together, but we're not communicating. So we're not talking, we're not, we're watching a show or he's playing a game on his tablet. And there's not the deep conversations we used to have. And I think we have really deep conversations with other people, and we're really good at wanting to help people. And we love helping people, and I just want to help ourselves. And I want to be as good as we are to other people, to each other. And I think that we used to do that very well, and we suffer right now in that because he's in his castle and I'm constantly nagging to draw him out.
Yeah.
And I know we go into our patterns, and I know that we're good people, and I know we have a good marriage, but I want to have a great marriage, and I want to love him the way he needs to be loved. And lots of times I don't know how to do that. The fighting is just a byproduct of what we're missing, and we keep missing it. And we start to argue, to fight to win together, and I think we abort the mission because we get lost in the emotion and the pattern of where we start attacking each other.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right. And when you talk about old patterns, there's probably a good reason why each of you have the needs that you have. And they come from a void in the past, right? So Jeff, if I asked you, why do you think being heard is your need? Like, what was the void?
Oh, that can start with my stepfather abandoning us. So I've got deep rooted sense of abandonment. Um, when somebody doesn't acknowledge what I'm saying or feeling, to me that feeds upon that sense of abandonment. It's like, uh-oh, now we're walking down that road again. Now I'm going to lose this person I care about. Um, and also with my grandmother, she very much invalidated me. She loved my brother, but she was disappointed that I was even born, as rough as that sounds, but that's how she treated me.
Hmm. So for you, it's really going back to that validation. It's like when you hear me, I feel that you value me. I feel
Mhm.
valued by you. And when I don't feel valued by you, heard by you, it really stings
Yep.
and then causes you to get triggered and kind of go into your mode of pulling away, which is disconnecting from her,
Which I desire.
which
Mhm.
you really desire. So it's that loop of, okay, if you're not gonna hear me, I'm gonna pull back. Then when he pulls back, you start to feel scared, insecure, anxious, right? That because that's what makes you feel secure is that connection. Why do you think that your deepest need is connection, Michelle? Where was the void?
We've done so much work on this, and where the void is that we grew up with there's several sisters, and we grew up in this place of we had to fend for ourselves in most seasons of our childhood. And Jeff and I put this backpack on, and I'm just gonna go out into the wilderness and just do it myself, whatever has to get done. And I think when I'm not connected with him, I feel like I have to still perform by myself when I thought we were doing this together. I don't deal with the abandonment issue like Jeff does. We've talked about this a lot. I have more of the shame trigger. I've done the work where if shame shows up, it's a stranglehold, and I'm not going to deal with the shame. So if there's shame involved, I think I will withdraw from that. If it feels like I'm doing something wrong, I'm going to avoid it, and I'm going to probably redirect at that point is when you may call that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm losing connection with him. But when he's vulnerable, I want to help him. He got vulnerable with me the other day about a phone call at Christmas that his aunt called him. He's really close to his uncle, and he loves him. He's a father figure to him. And he said, Michelle, I didn't want to answer the call. I seen Barb's name come across, and I did not want to answer it. And I kind of stayed quiet because, again, I don't get it right away. I'm trying to think, why wouldn't you want to answer Aunt Barb? Aunt Barb, we love her. And then I got it when he looked at me because he had tears in his eyes, and he was thinking that it was the phone call that Uncle Phil had passed. And he said, but then I listened to the voice message, and it was Uncle Phil, and I called him back. And when he got vulnerable, I hugged him and, just said, let's go see him. Let's pack our bags. Let's go. Cause I'm passionate about everything. Let's go. I'm going to have you have time with Uncle Phil. We're going to spend time with Uncle Phil. You're going to love him. We're going to just do what we can. Cause I want to help him when he's in that place. I want to be everything for him.
Yeah.
And I know that he doesn't need me all the time. He has a relationship with God and then me, and he's a strong man, but there's so many times that it feels very accusatory at times, and it feels very distant, and it feels like, I'm gonna stay and come out when I want. And it's just hard. It's hard because, I want connection.
Yeah.
But what
Let
I've
me
learned,
ask you this, with that argument that you had most recently in the car, were you feeling connected, both of you, as you went into that car ride?
yes, I could say yes. That's the part that's so strange. Like, we weren't fighting before. Half the time we can't even remember what the heated topic was because it doesn't last long, and then we just kind of move on. But we weren't fighting or anything, and we were talking, and I don't think
So
there was.
you were feeling connected. How are you feeling, Jeff? Do you remember?
That I remember, we were doing okay. That I remember. I don't think we were in any type of disagreement or disconnect.
Mhm.
How about stress in general,
It was never
emotions in
coming back.
general?
Okay, so I think we were good.
Might have been trying to get home in a rush to get something done. That's the only thing that I can recall.
And I love you, but you're so good about time. I would say, probably 1% of the time, I'm gonna make us run late. Maybe 1%, if we can even say that.
Okay.
Because even when we're not in a hurry, I'm like, hey, we're in no hurry. Because he's brought that to my attention. So I try to tell him, like, hey, we're in no hurry right now. Like, you know, we're not in a hurry. We don't have anything to do for 2 or 3 hours, wherever we're going. We pray before we leave. Um, you know, it's just like this whole other person that takes over the space for him. And he doesn't act that impatient in anything other than the driving.
And you probably feel less connected to him in in that environment.
Oh, yes, 100%. I've walked it through with him so much, and now I've walked it through in my head, and I'm like, Lord, and I've prayed, and I'm like, where do I help? And where do I stay quiet? And when do I speak up? And this last time it was fear. I think before it was more anger, and I know probably the anger is the first and then the feeling, but I felt so the fear came upon me like the 2x4 bounty, and I'm like, please, I don't want him to get hurt or me or anyone else. And I've always said, like, I gotta tell him nicely, and then he'll do it. So even when I tell him nicely, it doesn't work. So that's like, can he not do it? Is it just not in his wheelhouse? So that's why when I asked him that question about Ashley, I didn't do it to be disrespectful. I did it for him to say, I wanted him to say no, even if Ashley was in the car, I would have still did that. Because then I would have thought, well, maybe he just doesn't have the capability of pulling back and going behind the diesel. There's something else there that's happening, because we weren't in a rush. And I really just wanted to know where to go. Where do I go from here? What do I say? And I'll be fully vulnerable with you and transparent, is when he goes into the castle and ignores me, I do feel upset and I feel the anger coming on. I want him to talk to me, even if it's a fight, because I need that energy to come out and tell me something, because I'm lost in my own thoughts at that point and I'm making things up.
So typically, who is normally in control of everyday decisions, small, big, what we're eating, where we're eating, just like everyday life? Like, is one of you typically more in control of those things than the other?
I would say they're in certain scenarios, I'm probably more in control of the food. Everywhere we eat and where we go, I ask him and he'll say yes or no,
So
but he
like
kind
the
of know where to
routine.
go. The routine. In the finances, it's 100% Jeff. Like, I don't even know some of my home bank accounts. I mean, like, he knows numbers, he knows payments. It's all him. I
Okay.
would say in shopping and everything, we're probably pretty equal. We'll tell each other everything about that. We don't fight about money. We don't fight about those kind of things. Like I said, we have a lot of areas that our values are spot on. We
Very
have
much aligned, yes.
very much aligned. We don't argue about going to church. We don't argue about what we do in the marriage ministry. We don't argue about any of those. And then like writing the lesson, it's always Jeff, because he's very analytical and he's very methodical and he's very smart when it comes to PowerPoints and all that. I'm more the talker, and I'm more like, hey, we should talk about this or we should do this. And then he puts it together. So we do a lot of that together. And I would say, on the business side, I'm more the front face of the business and I'm more generating the business. He's the back end of the paperwork, but somehow he's starting to cross in my lane and we're having a fight about it.
And see, I disagree. I think she's pushed me completely out of my lane.
Well, this is what I was trying to dig and see if some of that is reflective of what might be happening in the car,
Mhm.
of like whose lane, meaning control, micromanaging. Like, Jeff, do you ever feel the feeling of being micromanaged in the car when you're driving? Do you feel like she's not letting you have your lane, or does that not come up?
I don't think that's for driving. I don't think that's a good description. I think I'm doing good stuff to keep us safe, is my thought process, as silly as that may sound. There is
Even
truth.
when she's questioning it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
does it bother you that she
Well,
questions it?
let me rephrase that to that question. When she's questioning it, I've probably done something too aggressive.
Cause I
Yes.
usually stay quiet in the
Yes.
drive. I don't even pay attention. I'm usually on the phone or doing some work.
Yep. I understand where you're going with that question, and you're right. Yes. Um, when I'm driving and I don't feel pressure to get us from one point to another. You know, and the real confusing part for it, which we've talked about this, the real confusing part of it is I get upset when people are inconsiderate
That's exactly right. That's the whole thing right there, and we should stay
in
there.
in the car.
And I'm inconsiderate, so that, wow, that was a light bulb for me right there.
And I'm not necessarily making that connection with you and the driving, but if we're not in a hurry, I'm not feeling the time crunch, I'm not feeling the pressure of responsibility, the stress of responsibility. If somebody's being completely oblivious to everybody else around them, it makes me upset.
Yeah.
And that's where the tailgating sometimes comes into play, or the flashing of the highlights.
You want them to know that they're being inconsiderate.
Yeah. And they're usually completely oblivious to me.
So those are the people that bother you on the road.
Yes.
The ones that are not taking you into consideration,
Interesting.
Mm.
which is your sore spot.
Yeah, that's a rub.
You're not hearing me. You're not seeing me. You're not validating me. You're not protecting me. Like, I need to show you that I'm here, and I need to kind of do what I need to do to show you that you need to pay more attention, similar to the rub that she has on you when she's just bulldozing everybody, including you. So I do think that your driving sore spots are not just about driving.
I
There's
can
something a little bit more going on there.
I can receive it.
And it makes sense that you would say that it's the inconsiderate ones that rub you the most on the
Yeah.
road. And the
Anyway.
moments when she's being inconsiderate that rub you the most in real life as well.
That's a great analogy. Great connection.
That's good.
Because you're going back to saying it's not just, I'm not just raging for no reason, but now we're figuring out the pattern of what it is that actually bothers you on the road. Like road rage is such a vague thing, right? But when you really narrow it down, it's reflective of something. Like certain people, it's someone who honks at them that's gonna totally annoy them, or someone that cuts them off, or so, like there's different things and they're pushing on different buttons. But I think it really makes sense for you that it's the in consideration, because that's the exact thing that you just talked about a little while ago that hurts you the most with Michelle.
It's a good observation.
So again, even that is reflective of some of the deeper work that you need to do. And what's going on in the car is just a little microcosm of what's going on in the bigger picture of your relationship, the healing work that God is doing in each of you. When you are feeling inconsidered by the person in front of you and you shut down, then she feels disconnected from you, which is her big issue. And then it becomes about both of your sore spots instead of what it's actually about, which is the goal of being connected emotionally and hearing each other and considering each other and validating each other. But I think it's important when you can keep that need in the back of your mind and see the other person through that lens. I even tell clients sometimes to imagine the childhood version of your spouse when they're in those moments and you're feeling hurt, right? Or they're feeling hurt. To imagine the little boy, the little Jeff who's feeling, I'm not wanted, I'm not heard, I'm not valued in this moment. I'm not being considered or cared for. To imagine the young version of Michelle who's like, I am not feeling a connection. I'm not feeling like I'm doing anything right. That shame-filled version of you. Sometimes when you can imagine each other in that stage of life, it brings a higher level of empathy and compassion. to
Mm.
be able to kind of handle those difficult moments instead of seeing the annoying adult version of each of you, you
Oh,
know?
I love that. I love that. I think that is amazing because all I want to do is help him, but we see the adult version of the behavior and I act on the behavior. I
Yeah.
don't act on the wound and the hurt because if he shows me the wound and the hurt, I want to be there and clean it and fix it and help him and let's do something about it. And I'm looking just at the behavior of the comments or what I'm getting triggered by, and I'm not looking deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say, Jeff, is the opposite of feeling invalidated? When you're feeling invalidated or when you're feeling not heard or you're feeling as somebody's not being considerate and you invite the Holy Spirit into that moment, even if it's on the road or even if it's Michelle being annoying, just bulldozing, or the guy just cut you off and it's like, wait, did you not see me? What do you think the Holy Spirit would speak into that?
Peace and grace. I'm the most restful and the most content when it's at peace.
Do you feel seen and heard by God?
Yes.
And do you think it would bring peace to know that even when she's not seeing you the way that she needs to see you, or that guy in the SUV is not seeing you the way that they should see you, do you think it would bring peace to just take a minute and just meditate on the fact that you are seen?
Never thought about it, but I'm sure it would.
You know, even when you're driving, I'm just imagining the moment happening on the road and you go into this internal place of, Lord, you saw that. You see me. You know. And I wonder if that small internal act would even start to shift how you reacted. Because again, I think this driving thing is actually just a reflection of something deeper. It's not actually about the driving. For some people, it's about control. For others, it's about, feeling, like you said, invalidated, inconsidered. Someone is not being considerate. Somebody is degrading me. For different people, it's about different things. And so when I really get to that source spot and invite God in it in the moment, whether I'm driving or whether I'm in the middle of an argument with my wife, it's like the answer is, how do I fill that void right now? What power do I have to fill that void in my relationship with God? And then I can act and interact and react out of that filled place rather than out of that void. And it's very different response when it's coming out of a void versus when it's coming out of a place that was a void and now it's been filled by a new word from the Lord, a new perspective.
Just thinking about that made me feel different.
Wow.
Yeah. Made me feel different, envisioning that one circumstance that Michelle brought up with the piece of wood that hit the bumper on the car. Just thinking about that, placing him in that moment made me feel completely different.
I'd love to see how that plays out over the next few weeks as you're back behind the wheel. And Michelle, I want you to really take that into consideration too as you're interacting with Jeff.
Mhm.
That need for validation. I hear you. I see you. That means doing things differently when he's talking to you, not multitasking.
Yes. Mhm.
I just hit a sore spot and I didn't even know it. But
That's a big ask.
I
'Cause
know it is. I'm sure it is.
she is the consummate multitasker.
But
Yeah.
even just taking that need into consideration, like how am I communicating to that need of I want to feel heard, prioritized, validated. And same with you, Jeff, as you're interacting with Michelle, of how am I communicating to that deeper need of she needs to feel connected and close. So what does it look like for you to come out of that castle voluntarily to meet the need for closeness and connection when you might not have the same need in the same moments? And then when our needs aren't being met, which they're not going to be met 100% of the time, how am I speaking to that void myself? How am I speaking to that need myself? How am I allowing the Lord to speak into that need? Because that's the only guarantee. But we can help each other, but there's going to be moments when the other person isn't speaking to that need the way we need them to. And that's when we really have to take ownership to speak to that need ourselves and watch things begin to shift.
Yeah, I like that.
So I guess we'll say to be continued, because I'm going to have to follow up with you and see how this goes over the next few weeks and months. But knowing the two of you, once something is in your awareness, once you've got that tool, you use it. And that's what's brought you to this point in your marriage. That's why you've healed so much and replaced so many old patterns. It's just you didn't see this pattern with your driving quite yet. Now that you see it, it's like, okay, I've got a new way to see this, a new way to deal with this. And so I'm pretty confident that it's just kind of the next layer until God reveals the next thing he wants you to work on.
Yep.
Yes.
Right?
He's good at that.
He really is. And it's a beautiful invitation. It's like, I am entrusting you with this is what I hear him saying. I am entrusting you with these hard truths because I want you to get even better. I want you to become even more like me. So he entrusts us with these difficult layers of healing because he's like, it's because I trust you to become more like me. It's an invitation.
No, I love that. And I'm grateful for Jeff for that because when we find people like you that are so good at what you do, you help us to get better so we can live our best life, but also help other people. We run to that because we believe in that. And then you believe in the same thing we believe in is, God helping us. And we want to heal and we want to move forward and we want to grow. And we know how much he loves us and how much we love him, and we want to be a good example for him and for each other.
How passionate we are about, sharing the stuff that that we go through and we learn from.
Yeah.
We both just have this desire to help, hopefully, somebody deal with what we've already dealt with or we're going through, and maybe it'll be a little bit easier for them.
Yeah. And
On a
you
funny
really are
note-
helping a lot of people.
On a funny note, we can end that Jeff looked at me one year. I got him a gift for Christmas and he said, it was the best gift you ever got me. I got him a gift to drive a stock car, a race car thing. And I'm like, go for it. Go on the stock car. He's like,
Go wild.
think I've ever done. He said, the guy looked at me and said, do you drive race cars for a living? I'm like, I don't know if that's a compliment, Jeff.
He's like, actually, I kind of do.
I beat his time on track, actually.
That's hilarious. That is really funny.
Like, we're going to pray for you, but go in a safe place.
Last thing I want to say before we go, do you guys commit to, or have you started the practice of a weekly check-in?
We were doing it when we were in a very tough spot. We were doing a daily check-in when we first started working together.
We've stepped away from it.
Yeah,
should
we
step
stepped
back
away.
into.
Yeah, we have stepped away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say consider going back to that weekly check-in because it gives you each a safe, built-in opportunity to speak into that need where Jeff gets to feel heard for half hour to an hour, just to share what's going on inside of him, to be looked in the eye with no multitasking. It's not in the middle of work. We're not on our way to work. We're not talking about a deal. It's just me and you. And Michelle, you're kind of forced to turn it off to check in and stay focused. And then you get to feel connected. It's
Mhm.
that vulnerability. It's like when he is vulnerable because he's prepared for it and planned for it and he's ready to step out of his castle. He knows it's coming.
It's true.
He gets to share and then you get to feel that connection. I would really suggest a weekly check-in. And I'm going to send you guys a weekly check-in guide with just some rules, some patterns, some questions you can ask to help you get started to make it really significant for you in this season.
I love that.
That's
Thank
great.
you so much. We thank
Yeah,
you for what you do.
absolutely. It was so good
Definitely.
to chat with you, and I look forward to following up soon and hearing how things are going.
Sounds great.
It'd be
Okay.
awesome.
Thank you for joining me. You all take care.
Thank you.